next presenter, our panelist, is Percell Gaskins. Now, he was actually the keynote of our last event we had at the Medorsky Theater in 2019. Former NFL player, senior software development engineer at Amazon Books, and his entrepreneur award choice is knowledge.
All right. Well, I want to start off by telling a quick story. This story starts off in Belfast, Ireland. And what happens is you have some businessmen, some stakeholders, we'll call them project owners. And these project owners had an idea to build a state-of-the-art ship. And they wanted to build this state-of-the-art ship and they wanted to sell it across the Atlantic. So what did they do? They went and found a project manager. Project manager got together with engineers and they designed a ship that could handle the rigorous task of sailing from Belfast to New York. So they started on their journey of building the ship. And as you know, project owners, they're the funders. They're the ones with the money, with the resources. They have these resources and they're using these resources to build this magnificent vessel. And as they're building this magnificent vessel, there come some regulators in and they knock on the door and the regulators say, hey, you're going to have some safety implementation in place. I said, what is that? Well, you're going to need to have some lifeboats in place. And so they looked at the regulations and they found out a loophole in the regulations where they only needed a certain amount to pass the inspection of actually what was required. And so they got the minimum amount of boats on this particular vessel. It was a huge vessel, a huge investment. And at this point, the current project manager heard about it. He went and talked with the stakeholders, the project owners, and he ended up quitting. He ended up telling them, well, if we're going to cut corners, I don't want to be part of this. And so what he did, he just dropped it. And it was inherited by someone else, one of the project owners' family members. They went on building. When they finally got this ship built, and there was so much excitement about this ship being built, that they named it as being the unsinkable ship. And so they got all these people together and they had lifeboats on board this ship, and it was amazing. It was the first of its kind, well, the second of its kind. The first, there was one that sailed before it, but this was the second ship of its kind in Belfast. Where as they sailed this ship, they figured they would make a lot of money and that this would be cutting edge innovation for the time that it was built. And they sailed this ship and they went off sailing this ship. They sailed this ship and there were 75% of the people on board weren't covered because there weren't enough lifeboats. We all know what that ship is. It's called the Titanic. Of course, the Titanic ran into an iceberg. It ended up sinking. 25% of the people on board that ship were saved. Why? Because the lifeboats could only support 25% of the people that were on that ship. So that brings me back to what I want to really get into is use this as a great example that projects never end wrong, they begin wrong. See, we can't grow beyond the limitations of our foundation. And when you look at what was taking place within the foundational planning of building between the entrepreneurial spirit that was behind the stakeholders and the project manager who was trying to manage a project because of the great task of building this great ship and the expectations that goes along with building a ship that they named unsinkable. So you have these two entities coming together, but what happened was at this foundational level, there was an understanding that they had come to realize that we're doing something that's going to meet if we're going to do it, we're going to do it so that it meets the needs of 100% of the people that it's called to serve. Did they build a great vessel? Of course they did. Did they build it state of the art, brand new? Yes, they did. But was it designed to meet 100% of the needs of the people in any event that would occur on this ship? No, it wasn't. And that's why 75% of those people lost their lives. So projects never end wrong, they begin wrong. Marriages never end wrong, they begin wrong. Relationships never end wrong, they begin wrong. That principle will never change. You can never grow beyond the limitations of your foundation. Behind every project assumption is an iceberg. They sailed the Titanic. The assumption was that it was unsinkable. The original project manager made a statement, and he said, the fact that a human being has built this means that it has the ability to have error in it. There's error in everything that humans touch. It's impossible for anything that's created not to have a measure of error in it, a measure of mistake in it, a measure of failure in that creative thing that's being created by the hands of a man. So behind every project assumption is an iceberg that can sink the whole entire project. And that brings me to the conclusion that in the 21st century, the knowledge that we really need will not be found in a book we read, but in the depth of the experiences that we have. The knowledge that we need we can't find it. If you look at the innovations that have taken place in the last 20 years, when you look at Steve Jobs, when you look at the creativity in technology in the past 20 years, none of it was in a classroom. It was in the hearts and minds of individuals that had experiences where that experience and that vision met, and the opportunity gave birth to Apple. The opportunity gave birth to the iPhone. When you look at Amazon, and you look at this great company that I've worked for the past going on 3 years, and you realize that it was started in a garage as a company that sold books. The awesome thing about it is that his foundation was, I'm going to create 12 leadership principles, and I'm not going to waver from these 12 leadership principles. And everyone who becomes a part of this company is going to learn, is going to be measured based on these leadership principles, not based on anything else. They're going to get hired, they're going to get fired based on 12 leadership principles. What do we know about principles? They're foundational. And because of those 12 leadership principles, we see a company that went from being started as a selling books out of a garage to the biggest company on the planet, the most profitable company in the last 20 years that we've seen. So in the 21st century, the knowledge we need will not be found in books we read, but in the depth of the experiences we have. The next thing I want to get to is that intimacy is the key that unlocks knowledge to solve problems. If we're not willing to become intimate with the problem, why would we think that the solution will reveal itself to us? And so many times knowledge is hidden in our ability to become comfortable with ambiguity. Working for Amazon, when I first started working for Amazon, my manager brought me in, and when I started my training, he said, "What do you think you need to be trained on? I need you to create me a training manual for how to train you." And in my mind, I'm like, I don't have a clue what a SD1 is. How are you going to put the responsibility on me to provide you with a training manual so you can train me? But it's that level of ambiguity that pulls out of you the solutions that are needed to grow and to develop and to create new innovative opportunities hidden in that ambiguity. So intimacy is the key that unlocks knowledge to solve problems. If we're not willing to become intimate with the problem, then we should not think that the solution will be revealed to us in a timely fashion. And then last but not least, each iteration is loaded with knowledge that gives us the ability to see around corners. When you look at the Titanic and you realize, yes, it was a failure. Yes, they made some grave mistakes, but there hadn't been a maritime tragedy like the Titanic since the Titanic. Why? Because we've learned from it. We learned. We changed the laws to protect people. We made sure that every boat that sailed had enough lifeboats on it. We changed. We became innovative and creative. And another example that I like to end with is that there was another boat that was on the water, and it was a boat that had some disciples in it. And this man, his name was Jesus Christ, and he was on the shore, and these men were in a boat, and they had been trying to fish all night to catch fish, and they couldn't catch any fish. And so they looked on the shore, and this man said, "Cast your net on the other side." Well, they looked and Peter, he was a fisherman, was like, man, I understand fishing. This is what I do for a profession, but nevertheless, at your word, I'll cast my net on the other side. He cast his net on the other side of the boat, and what happened? He pulled in so many fish that it broke his nets. The boat started sinking. They had to drag the boat in. They had to drag the nets in. There was so much fish that they didn't know what to do with. Now, that instruction, that innovative and creative idea to cast your net on the other side revolutionized the boating industry of their time. They had to build bigger boats. They had to make stronger nets. So the net makers got paid more. The boat makers got paid more. The woodworkers who had to create the wood and shape the wood in order to build the boats got paid more. And it's in that innovative and creative space that I encourage you to cast your nets on the other side of the boat. Thank you.